Drum roll, drum roll. I am I'm a tech guy myself. I was a programmer by training, but I've always been into building things and no code technology. And we're here with Nick from Bubble. Please, to kind of start us off, Nick, please introduce yourself and tell us about Bubble, and then take us away.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, thanks, Benny, for having me out. Excited to be here and chatting with you guys about Bubble, no code, and product. Kind of a few of my favorite things. So yeah, I'm a product manager at Bubble. I've been here for about 9 months now, which is maybe short for a lot of people, but for Bubble, that's like a long time. We've been hiring a lot lately, which is super exciting. Bubble is I would say, the leading no-code web app building platform out there. And our core mission, really, our North Star, is to enable underserved founders to access tech entrepreneurship through our no-code tools, right? Removing that bar that you have to know how to code if you want to build software. And so that's something that we live and breathe every day, and really excited to chat with you guys about how no-code can help startup founders kind of from all walks.
That's incredible. That really is. So thank you so much for being here. I know we were going to to set things up for everybody. We're going to go through kind of a presentation, just learn a little bit more about no code. And then I've got some questions that, as I touched, that I've been dying to ask. And then we'll listen to you guys' questions. But this is easygoing. And if you have something you want to chime in on, or you say, hey, can you explain that a little bit more? Feel free to put it in the chat. But Nick, thank you so much for putting this together and being here for us. Please tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can dive in if you'd like.
Yes.
To the presentation. I put together a little bit of presentation. The goal is not to bore you guys to death, just to kind of give you a little bit of primer, maybe, break the ice a little bit and get the conversation flowing. So please drop questions in the chat, messages. I want this to be interactive. I want to answer your questions. I want to hear what people have to say. But I will start off with a few slides. We'll kind of give a brief introduction of, let's see how I share my screen. A brief introduction of what no code is, what it means, where it's been, where it's going, and then kind of dive into how no code can help founders, just like everyone here with us. So when we say no code, we're really talking about visual development or visual program, like the tools that we can use to build software without having to write code. Looking at the no-code movement or low-code movement, this is fundamentally about democratizing software development and entrepreneurship in general by removing this barrier, this arbitrary barrier, if you will, of needing to know how to code to build software. And this is, again, like I mentioned in the beginning, something that is that's our core mission here at Bubble. Now, there's been kind of a lot of talk about no code. It's very hot. It's in the news. A lot of fundraising activity. But I think it's important to remember that kind of the idea behind no code, right? Abstracting away complexity in the name of developer productivity and user experience. This has always been a part of the tech industry. As soon as computers were invented, people were trying to figure out ways to make it easier to interact with, right? Something like Excel, before doing just simple calculations, was really, really complex. And then Excel was this graphical, visual way of interacting with kind of math and data that wasn't previously possible. So this idea of no code is really kind of a layer on top of an ever evolving tech stack. And we're just at the point now where what's possible is on par with what you can do with code. So if we look at the landscape, we have companies that are focused on no code for AI, no code for data manipulation, no code specifically for automation, no code for design, for e-commerce, no code for web apps like Bubble, for example. And these companies focus on startup founders, on individuals, on enterprise companies. So it's a really diverse landscape that's really blossomed over the past few years. Bubble itself was founded back in 2012. Zapier and some other companies, Squarespace, also started very early on, and the landscape has only evolved and matured since then. Looking at some of the progress, so there's been some really exciting stuff around valuations and fundraising, which I think is, yes, it's great, from a business standpoint, but it's also a sign that no code is legit, that it's real, and that it's here to stay, and that it's something that that not just the users really enjoy, but investors are finding a lot of value in as well. So, for example, Webflow and Uncork both valued at over $2 billion, which is crazy. Bubble, we just raised 100 million Series A recently, which is super exciting. We're hiring. So it's one of those that's showing that this interest in no code is not going away anytime soon. That's something that's here to stay. And that's kind of on the platform side, but looking at people using no code and building businesses with no code, we've had one very recent fundraising announcement from a Bubble app called Breaker. They just raised $4.2 million to connect emerging musicians and influencers to help with music discovery. Super cool company. Coins, they raised $1.5 million somewhat recently. They're a Bubble-built fintech. So there's some really exciting things happening with the apps that are being built on no-code tools, not just the no-code platforms themselves. Now, kind of brief introduction on no-code, kind of no-code 101. Okay, what does this mean for me as an entrepreneur, right? So I would say the biggest benefit and kind of what I'm going to focus on here is that no-code tools take away unnecessary complexity and allow you to build faster for less. And that's super important because, think about like a simple login form, right? If you were to hand code that, okay, you have to design what the inputs look like and, set everything up on the page and then write all the logic in terms of logging in and all that. Whereas on a lot of no-code tools these days, you drag an email input, you drag a password input, you drag a button in, and when you say click the button, log the user in, right? So something that could have taken, a few days, if you're a proficient developer, is now taking a few minutes, right? So it's this idea that because we've abstracted away stuff that's already been done, we're making it visual, we're making it easy to use, we can build really fast, and it doesn't really cost us that much, both in time and money. Going to take a step back before really diving into the benefits and I guess frame this conversation in terms of lean product principles. So I myself am a product manager. I love this stuff, read a lot of books, but I think kind of these principles are very important for any entrepreneur building software. So I don't know if we have some people who have read Marty Kagan's book, Inspired. Marty Kagan is a very well-known kind of product expert, worked at a number of companies, but kind of has been a guiding voice in product, I guess, theory, if you will, over the years, and wrote this amazing book called Inspired, which has resonated with me a lot as a PM in terms of how kind of modern product teams work and like the approach to building software products. And so one thing that's really stuck is this idea of a dual track, right? Where you're running product discovery at that ideation phase, right? I have all these ideas and you're testing them, right? You're testing them over and over again. And then as you've tested and as you're going through that process, the good ideas, the things that are tested and validated make it to the delivery phase, which is this idea of kind of production ready, product level, things, features or products that are ready for users to interact with. And why I like this model so much is because it leverages two things that I find to be very true. One, most of your ideas will be bad. And two, it will always take more iterations than you expect to actually deliver business value. You're never going to get it right on the first try. It always takes more than you expect. So I wanted to preface with this, and we'll kind of dive in based on some of these these product principles that hold true for a lot of modern companies. So first, product discovery. You have an idea for something, right? I have a great idea for a startup. I have a great idea for a product. I have a great idea for a new feature for my existing business. It's very easy to just dive in and say, okay, cool, I'm going to build it. One of the big things about lean product is continuously validating your assumptions, right? Validate, validate, validate. And the way we do that is through prototyping. So in the past, it could be a sketch that you're showing to users. It could be, an Envision prototype that you put together a few screens and that you can click through, putting that in front of users to see what they think. It could be, finding that if you have an assumption about something, is this a good idea, right? Is this something that customers are going to care about, right? Value risk. Is this something that users are going to be able to use, right? Are they going to be able to discover the functionality, usability risk? Is this something that we can actually build, right? Like some new technology or some new feature, we don't necessarily know how to build it. How do we reduce that risk? Is this good for our business? Is this something that's going to make money? Is this something that's going to align itself with our goals, our objectives? All of these things need to be validated, or else you're just putting time and money into things that don't pan out, that become a waste. So if we're serious about prototyping, if we're serious about testing, if we're serious about this product discovery process, being able to create prototypes quickly and show them to users is something that's extremely important. And what I love about no-code tools is that you can build and test these prototypes in a fraction of the time. So while you might have turned to your favorite, design software and put together a mock-up of what a UI might look like, or strung it together in terms of a kind of a clickable prototype, this is something that you can build, in a matter of minutes or hours on a no-code tool, and then put it in front of users and then continue iterating on that. So one of the big benefits, again, when we're looking at speed and cost, is that you can do these prototypes and run these tests and validate your assumptions at a much faster pace. Now, let's say we've validated our idea and we put it in front of users and it works great and we're really excited. We've thrown some other ideas to the side because they didn't work out that well. We can think about moving over to product delivery, right? Where we're, okay, we know it works, we know our users are going to like it, so let's get it ready for them to actually use in their everyday lives. That's what we mean by product delivery. And so if we look at kind of maybe the old school way where we're hand coding things and we have an engineering team, or you are the engineering team yourself, you need to now move over to a new system and start coding and all the concerns that come along with it. And what's really exciting about a lot of no-code tools out there is that if you built that prototype, right, let's say you whipped up a really quick bubble prototype, you can iterate on that prototype right away and get it to a production ready, MVP for your users on the same platform without any repeated work. So it's one of those things where we're following the same principles, right? Nothing is changed too much in terms of how we approach creating good products. We're just able to do it in a much more constrained or compressed time schedule, which, as we know, right, time is everything in startup world. So great, we've gotten to the point where we've built something that we can put in front of our users, and we validated a lot of those assumptions. I think I'm hoping that everyone here knows the term product market fit, and that finding product market fit for your startup is everything, right? And so Andreessen is credited with having, I think, one of the most popular or accurate descriptions of product market fit, being that you are in a good market with a product that can satisfy that market. And so what does that really mean? It means that you have created a product, it has a value proposition, a feature set, a user experience, everything that meets underserved needs of a target customer. And to find product market fit, that involves continuous iteration based on user feedback and data. So even though you've gone through product discovery and you validated your idea, even though you've built something, an MVP, and you put it in front of users, like I said before, right? More iterations than you think. So that ability to get something in front of users, get that feedback, and continue iterating means you're going to find product market fit faster, or be more likely to find it than if it took you months, let's say, to iterate on that product and find that real thing that users love. Might break here for a quick story. My first startup was in live music space, and I was a tour manager. I knew the problem space. I thought I was the expert, and I had a good idea, and I was like, okay, cool. I talked to some people about it, validating my ideas. I read all the books and learned how to code, started coding, and it took, I think, 2 years to get something in front of users that they would maybe pay for. And then it took another year after that to where they would pay for it. So that is a terrible example of this process that I talked about. And looking back and thinking about some of the no-code tools that we have at our disposal these days, I could have built something in a few weeks and put it in front of users, and then figured out, would they pay for this? Would they not pay for it? And then iterating on that, and gotten maybe in 6 months, a year's time to the same point where it took me 3 years. So it's not just kind of theoretical gains, but these are things like it is a meaningful difference in terms of time, and getting to that point where you found product market fit, where your product is making money. We call that time to money. The faster you can get there, I think we can all agree that that's something that is will be beneficial to everyone. And now we found product market fit, right? We're going to scale our company. We're really excited. Again, these cost savings and this ability to build this without all the same kind of engineering resources that traditional coding requires. This means that we can actually pour money into other parts of the business. A software product isn't just engineering. It's design, it's marketing, it's sales, it's support. These are all things that help our businesses grow and help our businesses scale. So the money that you're able to save on the actual building and the actual engineering, you can put those into other parts of your business that allow you to actually grow and grow a lot faster. So it's important that the no-code benefits don't stop at just the building side. They carry through into other aspects of your business as well. And maintenance, right? Just because you built the thing, it doesn't mean that it's over. There are going to be infrastructure costs and maintenance costs. And even if you get an offshore firm or your buddy to help you build something, well, who's going to maintain it, right? Like that's kind of the other half of the equation that is forgotten about a lot of times when we're talking about building software products. And one of the great things about a lot of the no-code tools out there is that this is built into the product offering, right? Like at Bubble, your database, the hosting, everything is, the infrastructure is all part of the package. And so you don't need to worry about load balancing. You don't need to worry about spikes in viewership or what happens when you're outgrowing your database or things like that. It's all part of the package. So another really exciting benefit to entrepreneurs building software products is that no-code tools can reduce this maintenance overhead compared to more traditional methods. So hopefully, I know I kind of went pretty fast there, but hopefully we found some things interesting in that. But I just want to kind of make the point that that no code, right, by abstracting away that complexity, by taking away that bar to not having to know how to code to build software products, you're empowered to follow these best practices. You're empowered to iterate quickly and efficiently. You're able to get to market faster with your product. And then you're able to scale more effectively than traditional methods as well. And all of this while kind of opening the floodgates for more people to become tech entrepreneurs than ever before. So yeah, thank you for listening. Excited to kind of the fireside chat and Q&A portion of this presentation. Going to leave a few resources here that I found particularly helpful, both at Bubble and also in kind of my journey on the product side. So yeah, thanks again.
Awesome. That's so, I love that. Especially some of the things you covered are things that I've felt myself, as I've been building, and I think it was cool. We saw someone in the chat when you were like talking about the mistake you made, and they were like, I made that one too. These things happen. Awesome. Because so to dive into some questions, I know I even saw some come up in the chat. So I thought I'll wait on mine for a moment. I know Ross had a really interesting question. Ross asked, what's the best way to encourage healthy partnerships between coders and users of no-code tools? Gave the example of Microsoft Access burning some people back in the day. Yeah,
I think it's, and whether it's real or not real, there is this tendency to kind of like compare no code versus code. And, I just talked about a lot of the benefits, but it's not to say that like coding's bad or anything like that, right? At the end of the day, we all want the same thing, right? If you are a developer and you know how to code, then, and a coder, that's awesome, right? Like that's amazing. If you don't have that background, or even if you do have that background, but you're like, I don't want to like rebuild things that kind of have already been built, or I want to test something out like really fast, right? In a matter of minutes, rather than like, yeah, I could code it, right? I could do all that, but I could also just do this thing like really fast. Why not? So I think what's cool is that, Bubble, for example, has a lot of technical users that can code, that are very proficient coders. And they're like, but I just don't need to for this use case. Or there are some benefits that I find, or for a number of reasons. So I think in terms of answering your question, Ross, is remembering that at the end of the day, we kind of want the same thing and it's the same outcome. I mean, every no-code platform is built by developers. And so it's not to say that developers aren't relevant, not to say that coding is not important or something that's going to go away. It's never going to go away. I think the hope is that the engineering resources go to solving problems that really require it, not solving things that have already been done, like, like a marketing page or input forms. And, a lot of like web development things, they've been built before. There's not really that much groundbreaking stuff at a basic level. But focusing on performance or new challenges, hopefully we see a shift to where that's where kind of traditional engineering resources migrate to, and no-code platforms are there to serve both technical users in terms of power and non-technical users in terms of usability.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to approach it. And we have a similar question that kind of continues to focus. So it's from Robinson. Robinson asks, as an engineer and a business owner with a custom software focus, how does Bubble bridge the gap between the two? And to give the example of saying, love to use low code, to help these clients validate ideas, but kind of finding himself running into a wall with the low code applications. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's totally fair, right? I'd say the platform is super powerful. You can do a lot, but realistically, you can't do everything just yet. One of the great things about code is that it's infinitely flexible, right? You can sit down and create value and new things just like that. So I think the eventual goal is that reliance on custom code will become less and less, so that the users who don't know how to do that or don't have that access don't need to rely on it. So the platforms will evolve to become more powerful and more flexible and allow you to do more things. But I think one of the things that at Bubble, if you are familiar, right, and you are a developer, you can write your own plugins that extend the functionality of Bubble. You can, at any point drop in like blocks of custom code. So if you have some custom styling or things that are important to you that can't be currently accomplished, there are portals or ways of doing that in the product as well. And so I think that's something that is not going to go away anytime soon in the Bubble product either, because again, that idea of kind of ultimate power and flexibility is also very, very top of mind for us as well.
Yeah. And Robinson and Ross, feel free, if you want to add kind of a follow-up, or if you have any follow-up questions to that, feel free to continue in the room. Likewise with anybody else, if it's either a question about something that we talked about that Nick had in his presentation, or maybe a question we were asking, or something new, maybe something that we haven't touched on at all, but that's on your mind, please let us know in the room chat. I do have one that is a personal question of mine, because I've got you in the room. I've got to ask, like, what's in the future of NoCode? And I know you touched on kind of like this wall, and the wall maybe moving forwards, but like, what might be possible with NoCode either in the next few years or in the next decade that could really just kind of shake the earth a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know if there's going to be necessarily like this one kind of flip of the switch, momentous occasion. I think what we're going to see is a kind of growing adoption of no-code tools, right? Like the more people that are involved in the ecosystem, the stronger it's going to get. And so we're going to see it become kind of more mainstream and more people doing kind of everyday things. Like we're seeing startups raise money now being built on no-code platforms, whereas maybe a few years ago, investors might have seen them like, is this real? Is it going to stick around? I would feel more comfortable if this was built on a traditional like web technologies. We're starting to see that that's not really the case. That the focus is, hey, that is a totally fine and accessible technology. We care more about the business value that you're creating. So I think like this abstraction away from like, oh, what technology are you using? And like, okay, what business value are you creating? Like, I hope that stays kind of the forefront of the conversation, because we're going to be doing everything we can behind the scenes to make sure that our founders can focus on that, right? That Bubble users can, all they need to think about is how can I create a badass product? How can I create value for my users? We want them to focus on that, not necessarily what technology they're using. So I think, our hope is that like the next Airbnb, right? The next Bumble, the next big company is built on a no-code platform and shows everyone that, hey, right, this is an alternative to learning how to code or other traditional methods.
Yeah, and to ask one on the decision-making side, it's a question from Benjamin. Ben asks, how does Bubble make decisions on their tech? So such as client side versus server side rendering, or other ways of delivering the web app? And is there a focus on speed and usability?
Yeah, I'd say, that's a great question. I can say that right now performance is a top priority of ours. That there's been a lot of focus on usability and like expressivity and being able to do a lot of things with Bubble, but it's also very important that companies can scale, right? Once they've proven out their ideas and once they have users and the business is doing really well, that they can keep growing. Like we want a Bubble app to be just as performant as a hand-coded app, right? We don't want there to be any difference. So we are a product user-led org, and usability is always super important, but I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. And there are definitely a lot of very interesting conversations happening internally about how workflows work and kind of the underlying technology of Bubble, like how it handles, client side versus server side rendering. How, do we have API calls like running off the client, off the server? Is there a mix? When? Why? When you and I don't want to go too technical here, but there's like a lot of really cool conversations happening about, right, how we, about the tech decisions we make. But I would say that the guiding principle is always usability, and with a reinforcement now in terms of performance for our users. Like, does this hit the bar of a hand-coded website?
Yeah, I think that's a big challenge. I mean, even because, you know, like, as you were saying, like, seeing that this is new, you know, saying that all of these companies have done this a different route, it is a big challenge to even just say, hey, look, no, we're there, you know, it's all the same. And I speak personally, I think you're doing a great job at it. I think it's a really incredible platform. And I also wanted to say, by the way, feel free to be technical. If there's one place to be technical for a little bit, it is here at the Forward Tech Conference. So feel free.
Sure. Yeah, fair enough.
And I know Robinson asked a follow-up. And if you remember, Robinson was asking about the business owner, you know, and custom software. And he says, how would you convince a non-technical user who is intent on building a custom app that perhaps they should build a no-code app?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think one of the, like, looking back at some of the things in the presentation, I think there is a, you know, learning how to code or coding that was like very important for a very long time, you know, kind of Web 2.0. And I think it's like, maybe it's a trust thing, or since no code is still relatively new, like a lot of these platforms, like in terms of being mainstream, is relatively new. So I don't know if it's a trust thing, if it's well, yeah, it's great for prototyping, but it doesn't scale. Like, a lot of those are just myths that we need to dispel. So I would say try it, right? Like, there's a bit of a learning curve on Bubble and other tools out there, but just like anything worth doing, you know, if you put in a little bit of time, the reward you get is massive. So, you know, yes, there's a little bit of a learning curve to learning anything new, but it's definitely lower than learning how to code. I'll tell you that. So I would say, you know, one of the things is try it, right? If it's like, you can start building so fast, which is really cool. And like, seeing that building happening right in front of you is a really cool experience. And I think that's why all of us who are builders, right, whether you know how to code or not, that's one of the like big rewards is, cool, you know, I'm building something right in front of me. I'm creating value right in front of me. Now, one of the other things about no code, which is great, like what I touched on, like no maintenance, right? So it's like, if this non-technical user intent on building a custom app, you know, let's say they pay someone to build it. Okay, well, you're gonna need to pay someone to maintain it too, right? And if you have updates, and if you need to make a pivot in your business, that's all gonna require more and more changes and more code to be written. Those things can happen a lot faster sometimes on no-code platforms. So I think it's kind of think about the life cycle of the product as well. And there might be maybe more reasons in there on that end to switch.
Yeah. I have had that conversation with founders before. And I think, and now I've got some, that's really well explained. I think you touched on, like, yeah, like, where is that kind of just that misconception, but also, yeah, like taking that into account and, you know, being very practical, you know, about what they can build and what they can do. I know another question, another one from Ben, is he's asking kind of a design scope, you know, and maybe as we've been talking about prototyping, does it make sense to use low code as a design tool like Figma? You know, would you use Figma or Adobe XD similarly? Or does Figma still have a purpose alongside Bubble?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I think selfishly, or I'm biased in saying that, you know, I would love for our editor, or like our UI builder, to be just as good as Figma, right? To give designers like the power that Figma gives you. And I mean, Figma is an amazing tool. Like, our product designer uses Figma. We have an integration where you can import your Figma designs. So, you know, it's while we want to be a like kind of one-stop shop, there's definitely benefits to, like Sketch and Figma, like purpose-built, right, design software. There's a lot of catch up in terms of on the feature side of what you can do. And so I think it kind of makes sense, like your use case. If you're a designer and you're very familiar with these tools and you really like them, you're probably really fast at it. And that's great. And if you're not, I think you can still build like really nice designs in Bubble without using some of those tools. And you have the added benefit of, well, the button's already there on the page. You can add a workflow behind it so that you can, click on it and do something. So I think there's a nice, it's kind of hard to answer because I think 100% it does have a purpose, but we'd love to get to a point where designers are turning to Bubble to say, okay, cool, I want to design Bubble, right? Like we want to get to that point for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned it too, that like I personally also use Figma, that they have a really effective interface for a lot of that. But yeah, and I think maybe there is part of the question was, it'd be lovely to be able to use them both at once. That would be lovely. Right. I think that's cool to know. And as we look at the progress and how far they've come in the last 2 years, I've got a good feeling you're going to make some amazing things happen, which is great. So super quick, as we kind of start to come up on the end of our session here, we've got another question in the chat. I've got one more question that I want to ask. Probably have enough time for maybe about one or two more. If people have any other questions they want to put in, about 3:45, 3:50, we will break for some networking. And we'll come to that in a second. But just want to let you guys know, if you have any burning questions, now is a good time to get them out there. But yeah, so Mirror View Marketing has a question for us about, do you think that the availability of an easy entrance with NoCode might correlate to the market being flooded with apps or devalue other options?
I mean, I think there are already a lot of bad apps out there, like, I mean, you go in the app store and there's tons of bad apps there. There's tons of bad websites out there. And so I think I wouldn't say that, I don't know if you could necessarily correlate the two. Like, sure, there could be more people out there now building bad apps, right? But I think also, right on the flip side, there could be more people out there building good apps. And like, building on NoCode doesn't mean that, okay, we throw best practices out the window, right? Oh, we throw lean products methodology out the window. Like, all of that stuff is still very important, and it doesn't really change. It just, you might be able to do it on a much more compressed time schedule, but like thinking about what you're building, thinking about the user, validating your assumptions, right? Applying those like principles, tried and true principles, when you're building a software product, whether you're hand coding or whether you're using NoCode, that doesn't change. So I don't think there's any difference in the quality of what you can build, because that comes down to the entrepreneur, right? That comes down to the founder. How good is this idea? How much do customers want it? Like, what thought did I put into building this thing? And that holds true whether it's NoCode or code. And hopefully, we get more domain experts that are actually the ones building the apps. And so maybe we even see higher quality apps coming out because the people that are best suited to solve that particular user problem are the ones that are building it. It's not going through like multiple layers of translation. So I kind of have maybe a more optimistic view of that problem.
Yeah, and I thank you for scoping it that way, because it's a really great question, and I think it helps give an eye on just another angle on how these things are building out and how we're doing this as a community. One for the technical side, and from so from Robinson. So does Bubble offer a private infrastructure solution? So if the goal is performance and keeping up with custom solutions, private cloud, in-house infrastructure at scale, what's kind of the end game for eventually building something like Netflix, or content distribution on Bubble?
Mm-hmm. So this will give kind of two answers. On the short term, we do have what we call a dedicated plan, which means you're running on your own AWS instance. So like you have a lot more control over that configuration because it's your own instance. Whereas, you know, most Bubble apps live amongst like shared resources that that Bubble buys from AWS. So yes, there is that opportunity if your business requires it to run on your own instance. And we have a lot of our bigger customers choose, not all of them, but a lot of our bigger customers choose to do that because they have very specific needs when it comes to infrastructure. So that is something that we do offer. I'd say if we're looking right a long time down the road, kind of end state, I would love for that concern to not really matter, right? Like I want to build Netflix. Okay, go build it, right? And whereas like a huge hurdle might have been, okay, well, how do we stream fast enough? And I know Netflix has done some incredible stuff on that front in terms of like you can stream Netflix in high quality with like no bandwidth, whereas like some websites you can't even load, right? So like, you know, Netflix has done some incredible things on the infrastructure side to make it all possible. I would love for those technology gains to not have to be rebuilt, right? For that stuff to be baked into low code and no code offerings moving forward. So if that is the business that you want to build, then that is something that you can do and you don't need to think about those kinds of constraints.
Yeah. So I know it's kind of our probably our last question for now. And as listeners may remember, you know, we're recording what Nick and I are up here saying, as well as you guys will be able to learn more about Bubble. But kind of maybe as a takeaway for users, like we've talked about a lot of ways that we can build things. What might be some really kind of tangible examples of things that, hey, if you're about to build this, give low code a try? You know, where can we work this into our stacks?
Yeah. I mean, you know, at Bubble, we have two big Bubble apps that we use, like all of our marketing pages, our CRM, like all of that is managed. Our plugin marketplace, all of that is on a Bubble app. So like internal tools, if you will, like if you have an existing business and you need some like automation, you need to grab data from one place to another, or you need like an admin dashboard or something like that, you know, low code, no code, something like Bubble is a great use case. If you have that idea, right? Maybe it's a feature or a new product for your existing company, or this is like a, you know, like a nights and weekends kind of thing. Like that's another great way to test it out, right? Just try building it. I mean, the amount it's insane how much you can get done in such a short period of time. Like I'm rebuilding on the side my old startup, and like weeks. It's insane how much you can do. So like testing out like a feature idea, testing out a business idea. If you just, even if you just have a marketing page that you need to throw up, right? It's a great way to kind of like play around with one of the things. Or if maybe it's a marketing page, but you need to collect a little bit of user data or create a waiting list or something like that. You know, all of those things are very possible on something like Bubble. So I would say the only thing that's not is if you have like an idea for a new cryptocurrency, or you have an algorithm for machine learning or natural language processing that you want to write, or like an insane amount of data analysis, like insane. I would say maybe, no code tools are not the right fit, but everything else I think is fair game. So
yeah, thank you so much. So in a minute here, everybody, I'm going to kind of set us all up for our quick break and for the next session. But I really want to take a moment to thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming out here, Nick.
Thanks for the awesome questions. I love that the crowd was engaged, and I loved answering the questions. So thank you. Yeah, Benny, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.